Ahoy there! I recently traveled to the Detroit Auto Show in mid-January. Last time I went there, I took a camera out for a spin, and it got a rather cold reception in the snow. 1 year later, the Detroit Auto Show is back, so I grabbed my camera again and took it out for its sophomore outing. But this time, I had a secret weapon up my sleeve. Sunday morning of January 18th began with the obligatory photo of the Uniroyal tire as we, being my family and I, crossed through Wayne County. It was snowing much like last year's show, with temperatures being pretty cold, with sub-zero wind chills expected the following day. When we got into the city, we parked at Bricktown Station to take the People Mover to Huntington Place. Even though we were about 5 blocks from the convention center, none of us were crazy enough to walk in this weather. We arrived at Huntington Place, where we were greeted by this neon Shelby GT500 sculpture. After getting our tickets, I was set loose, camera in hand. I immediately ran into a Ford Bronco RTR, but I'd go back to the Ford space later. I started by looking at the Bronco's competitor, Jeep. Not at any of the Wranglers, Gladiators, or Grand Cherokees because they were all the same old crap, but at the Recon. I think this thing's supposed to serve as a mini Wrangler with its roof implying that it can be removed. Looking at the plaque, it not only confirmed my hunch, it also ensured that no one would be able to buy it. The old Renegade cost half as much as this Recon in its Moab package. Things went from disappointing to intriguing with this Ram 1500 with a supercharged Hemi V8. Yes, Stellantis put the V8 back into the Ram in a gesture of goodwill, then went crazy. I haven't seen a pickup this bonkers since the Ram SRT 10. Well, I guess there's this NASCAR Truck Series Ram. Anyway, nothing came of that Chrysler Halcyon concept yet, so they're still selling only that old Pacifica minivan. Fiat still barely exists in the US with the 500e, but I've never in all my life seen rims that have letters on them. What are these supposed to mean? Well, after a little research, it means Giorgio Armani. Yeah, the fashion brand. Out of curiosity, I decided to sit in one to see how small it was. While it was small, I was able to fit in it with ease. Across from Stellantis, I saw the RTR space with their tuned Ford Mustangs. 2 of the Mustangs I saw had two-tone pearlescent paint. This one was the classic blue to green, while the other was yellow to green. They had other Mustangs too, like this wide-body one and this custom GTD. Then it was off to GMC, and I ended up confirming that the Hummer EV is massive. I haven't seen stock rims this big before. I didn't have a tape measure, so I used a quarter for scale. I headed next door to Cadillac and saw their F1 car because they're jumping into F1 too. But if everyone else jumped off a bridge, would you do the same? I washed that off with this concept car called the Elevated Velocity. That's clever. EV. However, I loved its slung profile combined with its tall stance and gull-wing doors, but mostly because of the gull-wing doors. What really caught my eye was the Celestique, which is a liftback and not a wagon. But damn it, I think it's a wagon, and wagons are cool, even if it is a luxury EV, which means no one's gonna buy it. Just like last year, a bunch of premium and tuned cars were present on the show floor. This line of Aston Martins was one such case. Then there was this gathering of Ferraris, including the Ferrari, or the La Ferrari, and the Enzo. I've never seen an Enzo in person, and after today, I don't think I'll ever see another one. Right next to the gathering of Ferraris was all the other exotics on the main floor. It had the usual suspects of Lamborghinis and Porsches, but what stood out to me were these cars. A Pagani Huayra, a Pininfarina Battista, I got this photo so I wouldn't forget its name, a Lamborghini Diablo pre-facelift, a Porsche 911 Turbo S, a Dallara EXP, at least that's what I think it's called, a Ford GT, a bright yellow Ford Mustang GTD, and a black McLaren Senna. It felt gratifying to get to see a supercar that was in a video game I sunk so much time into, the game in question being Forza Horizon 4. Now, I'm not the most experienced photographer, I'd say I'm a hobbyist, but I tried to get many different angles like this one with the Koenigsegg Regera. I almost went prone trying to get this low-angle shot. The things I do for my craft. Next, I found something very ironic. The new-ish Dodge Charger was named the North American Car of the Year. It's ironic because I've seen 0 Chargers of this generation on the road. Not because they're unreliable, though they very well could be, but because Stellantis didn't understand their buyers. No V8, yet. No Challenger replacement, too heavy, and too expensive. The sentiment I feel right now about cars is that they become way too expensive. Too much tech, too heavy, people don't want to buy electric, and everything's a crossover or SUV. The Ford Maverick, which was supposed to be a budget-conscious pickup, can't be had for under $30,000 anymore. Sure, the plaque may say $28,000 for the XL, but that's not what you're gonna pay for it because of high demand, low supply, fees, and dealer markups. But that's just me ranting. Back to the cool crap. I saw this Shelby Cobra, but I have my doubts it's a legit Cobra. It might be a reproduction car like one of those Factory 5 ones, though I can vaguely see a Ford badge in this photo if you zoom way in. Over at Subaru, I discovered the BRZ, and its GR86 twin for that matter, is not a car I'd want. Don't get me wrong, I love the idea of a relatively cheap rear-wheel drive sports car with not too much power, but getting inside this BRZ was like climbing into a clown car. It made the Fiat 500 feel like a Mercedes S-Class. I'm gonna pull a leg muscle if I ever got one. I'm 5'10", about average height, and I felt cramped getting in. So, that made getting out of the BRZ into a comedy bit. Right next door was Honda and the Civic Type R in Championship White. I was never the biggest fan of this Civic design because it looks too plain for my liking. Now the Civic Si next to it wasn't a looker either, but it's what's on the inside that counts. This is one of the few cars left that you can get with a manual transmission. The stick shift continues to become a lost art, slowly replaced by automatics and paddle shifters. Case in point, the Honda Prelude. This not a sports car had paddle shifters with buttons to select gears. Ask me how I know. I filmed myself climbing into it after nearly tying myself into a knot getting in that BRZ. But unlike the BRZ, the Prelude was just like getting into any other car. It didn't make my legs do awful things. But if I'm ever going to get a Prelude, I'd want it to be cheaper than $40K and have a face that doesn't look like a Toyota Prius. Speaking of Toyota, nothing caught my eye over there since there was nothing new from after 2025, so I went to Chevy. Same old, except for this Corvette concept. I think it's called the Corvette CX, and if I'm not mistaken, it's a Vision Gran Turismo car. Or at least the CXR is a Vision GT car. Speaking of the CXR, Chevy had a Gran Turismo 7 setup with 2 sim cockpits, one for a leaderboard lap around the Nürburgring, and one for a time trial around Laguna Seca. I had to do this, so take a guess as to which one I queued up for. Yep, the Laguna Seca lap. I can't lap the Nürburgring and Gran Turismo 4 without issue, let alone Gran Turismo 7. Unfortunately, I couldn't film my lap, not because they wouldn't let me, but because I couldn't find a spot to set up my camera without adding 2 minutes to the queue time. I knew I should have brought my tripod. At least I got a phone photo of my lap time. I would have recorded 2 laps if I hadn't spun out at turn 3 in the 3 minutes I was allotted. At this point, if you've watched my overview from last year, you'll remember that my camera's battery life is only 75 minutes long. How did I get past that? Well, this is where I introduce my secret weapon. It's a USB battery pack. I charged that up, brought a USB-C cable, and then plugged the cable into my camera. This hack worked, and I was able to keep shooting for this video. This brings us to the Ford section, where they introduced a version of the Mustang Dark Horse called the Dark Horse SC. SC meaning supercharged. They're stuffing a supercharger in an already badass pony car. That's about it for the stuff I saw on the main floor, though I did get a few other odds and ends. Most of the floor space was taken up by vehicle demonstrations similar to last year's show. There were Jeeps climbing up hills, there were Ford Broncos doing something similar, and there were EVs hauling ass around a closed-coned circuit. After looking at all the new stuff, it was time to gawk at all the custom cars. First was this R34 Nissan Skyline GTR. While I wasn't able to get up close with this Liberty Walk wide-body one, I was still able to get close-up shots of this iconic JDM car. That said, I'm not sure if I like the wide-body kit on it. It's got hints of Bosozoku in its design with its long front lip and blocky panels. It's not a Hakosuka, but it's definitely a boxy skyline. Wait, I just said the same thing twice. I'm not changing it. Outside the event hall was a handful of tuned cars, 3/4 of them being tuned Japanese cars, like a Zenki S14 Sylvia and NSX. Ignore that Ford Focus and its negative camber, and check out this Nissan Stagia. It's not exactly a Skyline wagon, but the Stagia of this era did share a platform with the Skyline and Laurel. I've seen this kind of Stagia with an R34 GTR front bumper swap before, and even Forza Horizon 5 replicated this for the dozen or so people who bought the DLC pack this Stagia was in. All the custom car action was down in the lower level, though I had to rush through this part a bit since we wanted to go eat soon. Here's a rapid-fire list of cars that caught my eye down there. A silver Dodge Viper with black stripes, a Nismo 350Z drift car next to a Volkswagen Beetle that has the Tanner Faust Rockstar Energy drink livery. I don't think that's the actual rallycross car. A Ford Ranchero and a Fox Body Mustang with the biggest rims I've ever seen on a Fox Body. An HCR32 Nissan Skyline GTS-T sedan. A Honda 2000 that'd be at home in Tokyo Xtreme Racer. A Chevy Caprice PPV with blacked out windows, new wheels, and Holden badges. If you know, you know. A Tiffany Classic, which was built off an MN12 Mercury Cougar chassis. That US Army tank that they debuted. This blurry shot of a new Edge Ford Mustang with that two-tone paint we saw earlier. A tuned Saab 9.3, that's pretty odd. A clean-looking Dodge Stealth. Another grouping of exotics. And a grouping of sporty Japanese cars like the Subaru Impreza WRX STI, Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution 4, or 5, or 6, I don't know, they all blend to me, and an S15 Nissan Silvia. Interesting because we got neither the Evo 4, 5, 6, whatever, or the S15 here in the States. Oh, and the two golden boys of 90s JDM cars, the R34 GTR and the Mark IV Toyota Supra. Yes, that's a real Supra, not like the outgoing Mark V that was a BMW Z4 underneath. We had done enough car spotting, so it was time to hop back onto the People Mover and cruise over to Mexican Town. In keeping with family tradition, we go to Mexican Town after the auto show for lunch. This time, we went to a restaurant I haven't been to since 2019, Taqueria Lupita's. We actually tried to go there last year, but they were fully booked and took cash only. Well, this time we had cash on hand, so we were go to dine there. I chowed down on a beef enchilada with a side of lettuce, rice, and refried beans. I ate about 75% of the entire plate and regretted eating all 3 enchiladas later that evening. It made me happy to not see any ice outside of my glass, if you catch my drift. Another auto show is in the books, but I can't help but feel that this year's show was more filler. I saw more of the same stuff I did from last year. That could be because we might be in the middle of seeing new models in development that won't be unveiled until maybe the next year or so. I saw only one new model on the show floor, and it was a new Jeep model that'll likely break the second it drives out of the showroom. On top of that, I feel like the new government pressured automakers to de-emphasize electric cars. Either that or they're simply not selling. Need I remind you, I haven't seen a single one of this show's Car of the Year on the road. The show wasn't packed, but it still felt alive and kicking, just like the rest of Detroit. To quote Jeremy Clarkson, it's still coughing up blood and guts. I'm hoping that next year's show will be where the big-name manufacturers introduce models that cost less than $30,000 and aren't exclusively crossover SUVs. If there's any takeaways I had from this year's show, it'd be these 3. 1, there's still some life left in this show. 2, my battery pack hack helped me run my camera for longer. And 3, I don't fit in a Subaru BRZ or Toyota GR86. Did you go to the show in person, and or what was your favorite car you saw at the show? Leave a comment. I was honestly surprised by the Cadillac Celestiq because it's a wagon-like thing in 2026. This has been Squiddy the Kid signing off. Like, comment, subscribe, and all that jazz.